Hey now. Oh yeah, look at my life. Hey now, yeah. Oh yeah, look at my life out here on the road.
Hey now. Hi everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of Scott Fox After 9. I have got a lot to talk about in this episode, and I hope you're ready. Spend a little bit of time with me here. This is going to take about 45 minutes to an hour today, and I'm going to try and cover some of the big stories that people are talking about. Before I get to those, though, one thing I want to mention is from time to time, I do What is Scott Smoking? See, there's a lot of places where you can get information on different alcohols, and there's a whole industry around wine in particular. But there's not a lot of people that talk about good cannabis recommendations. So I've taken it upon myself to go out and try and review all of the cannabis that's out there and give you my unbiased opinion on it, not influenced by anything other than my own personal preference. I got a really interesting DM from a listener yesterday. Let me see if I can find his name here. I want to thank Denver, who sent me a note. He said, Scott, you've got to try the MTL cannabis, sage and sour. He said it's got a unique smell like nothing he's ever smelled before. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try this. I did try it. I am going to, with a full-throated endorsement, recommend that you look for something. If you're looking for a new cannabis to try, MTL Cannabis Sage and Sour. I tried it yesterday on the recommendation of Denver here, and I got to tell you, the high I got off of that pre-roll was one that, he said the smell was very, very distinct. So was the buzz. It was really good. Now, I'm going to warn you, this one, all the compounds in cannabis affect us differently, so don't necessarily expect the same experience that I had. But I'll tell you, I felt real creative, really, really productive. I got a lot done. But wow, did it ever make me hungry. I think I ate like a whole loaf of garlic bread last night. It was terrible. But I feel terrible today because of it. But either way, MTL Cannabis, Sage and Sour. I'm going to leave it at that. If you're looking for a new cannabis recommendation, try that one. Now I want to get into a couple other things before I get to some of the audio on this episode of Scott Fox After 9. 3 things in particular that are on my mind. Speed cameras is something I've talked about a lot in the last number of weeks here on After 9. I am happy to tell you the Toronto Star is today reporting that Ontario Premier Doug Ford is going to introduce legislation this fall to outlaw those speed enforcement cameras. Now, I don't have any details on it other than what the Star is reporting. I guess we'll have to wait to hear from the Premier himself. But I just want to say bravo to Premier Doug Ford, because everybody knows these things are a cash grab. The Premier has been saying it himself, and it seems like nobody is looking out for the middle class. When these municipal governments who are bad at math and can't seem to follow their own budget, when they come out with something like this and they know there's firm opposition from the taxpayers and they still try and jam it through anyway, you know that those mayors are on the wrong side of this issue and the Premier is on the right side of this issue if in fact this headline is true and Doug Ford is preparing to outlaw these speed enforcement cameras. Doug, you have my full support. Thank you for doing it. Now let's get it done and get rid of those cameras so that we can get back to normal and talk about real, practical ways to make traffic move a little better and to slow people down in areas where they need to be going slower, like school zones and in community safety zones. So thank you, Premier. That's great. Once we get some actual facts and details on that, I'll talk about it a little more in depth. I also want to talk about Tylenol. Yesterday at the end of the podcast, if you didn't hear in the regular episode me talking about Tylenol, here's the Coles notes. It was an incredibly sloppy rollout. The way that President Trump came out and announced Tylenol is bad, don't take Tylenol, I was mortified. See, I know that there's a lot of folks out there who are very interested in this topic, but they also have a conflict because they do not like Donald Trump. And you know who else should know that? Is Donald Trump himself. This is an important thing that required very credible people to explain. Not Robert F. Kennedy Jr., not Donald Trump. Neither of them needed to come out and make that announcement. In a nutshell, they've found a link between Tylenol use during pregnancy, acetaminophen, and autism. Now, it's not a smoking gun. Not a smoking gun by any means. I heard a great analogy for it. I'm going to give you that analogy in just a sec, a different way to think about it. But before I even get to that, a couple of things. Number one, if Trump wanted that message to be heard and really paid attention to by the masses, I don't know why they didn't call in a pediatrician from St. Jude's Hospital or something like that. Somebody who has a lot more credibility than Donald Trump himself saying, don't take Tylenol, Tylenol's bad. They needed somebody with a little more credibility to make that announcement because it is serious. And yeah, there is actual science behind this. The dean of medical studies at Harvard was actually the one they were talking about when they made that announcement from the White House just the other day. This is something backed up by Harvard that a lot of pediatricians are getting behind. This is something that pregnant women in particular should definitely know about. But it lost all credibility because there's so many people that just don't like Donald Trump. And in the last 24 hours, my feed has been filled with people that are trying to stick it to Donald Trump. They're clearly pregnant and pounding down Tylenol. Listen, if you don't like Donald Trump, I totally understand, and I don't blame you. He's certainly given us a lot of reasons to question the things that he says. But let me just say this. There's something there. I'm not going to say it's the only smoking gun, and I'll give you that analogy in just a sec. I'm not going to say it's the only smoking gun, but there is something there. This was studied by the U.S. government long before Donald Trump even got elected. And even at that point, they could say inconclusive was the result of their study. Inconclusive. Okay, listen, if even back then they acknowledged there was something, and even now that you've got Harvard putting their name on a study that says there's something, maybe you should consider that there's possibly something there. And nobody's saying don't take Tylenol if you're pregnant or your kid will have autism. Nobody's saying that at all. They're just saying there could be a link, and they're going to keep studying it. Here's the reason that I think we need a good analogy to put this in plain, practical, and simple terms. Think of it this way. If you smoke cigarettes, there is definitely a link between smoking cigarettes and lung cancer. Now, if you smoke cigarettes and don't get lung cancer, that does not mean that cigarettes are not linked to lung cancer. Not by any means. You could smoke cigarettes for an entire lifetime and not develop lung cancer. Then there's other people who did develop lung cancer, and cigarettes are indeed some sort of a trigger. Think of it that way. Just because you smoke doesn't mean you're going to get lung cancer. Just because you didn't get lung cancer doesn't mean that there's no link between cigarettes and lung cancer. And the same thing applies with Tylenol. Again, what the research said is there's a link, and you should use it sparingly or only on the advice of your physician. It shouldn't be the go-to, popping Tylenol, unless you actually need the Tylenol. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm not a doctor, by the way, and nor should you take medical advice from me. I'm just trying to clarify what's going on, and there's a lot of people who, just because Donald Trump was the one who said it, are now going nuts taking Tylenol while they're pregnant, and I don't know that that's the best advice. If you take Tylenol and have a baby that does not have autism, that doesn't mean that this whole study is debunked. If you didn't take Tylenol and still had a baby that has autism, that doesn't mean that this study is debunked. All they were saying was there's a link. They need to study it a little bit more, and while they're doing that, you should probably use Tylenol sparingly. I hope that that makes sense. I don't know if I've done a good job at explaining it, but I do want to ask anyone who is pregnant, considering getting pregnant, etc. Just because it came from Donald Trump, I don't think we need to write this off. Nobody's saying you can't take Tylenol. They're simply saying that there's a link there that they need to study more. I just want everybody to do what's best for them and take into account some good practical medical advice. Nobody's banning Tylenol. Nobody's saying you can't take Tylenol. They're just saying that there is a link there, and you should consider that while you're pregnant and preparing for the birth of your child. And really all of your attention should be focused on the birth of the child and having a great pregnancy. So I wanted to put that out there because I feel like because Trump said it, there's a lot of misinformation going around about what was actually said. And I would encourage anyone to please read what actually came out. Read that paper from Harvard because there's something there. The last thing I want to talk about before I get to the other content in this episode is something that maybe I should apologize to all of you, because this is a topic that I'm interested in, but I haven't really covered it here on the pod. As you've likely heard by now, Today, in all likelihood, the Canadian government, led by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is going to cull a flock of about 400 ostriches. And if you open your social media today, you're probably going to see a lot about ostriches, and maybe you're wondering why. Let me give you the Coles notes here, and then let's talk about whether or not killing them is the right response. There was an avian bird flu outbreak where these ostriches were living. This happened way back in December, and some of the birds died. The rest of the birds either never got it in the first place or they recovered. Well, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency wants these birds killed because they were exposed to the avian bird flu. They're worried that avian bird flu could either spread because of these ostriches or that it could mutate into something else. The people who don't want to see these ostriches killed argue that these birds are perfectly healthy, and either they never had it in the first place, or if they did have it, they recovered. And one thing we know about infections is if you recover from it, you've likely developed antibodies. And the suggestion here is don't kill these 400 ostriches, these beautiful animals that have done nothing wrong and are perfectly healthy and well cared for in the sanctuary that they're at. Don't kill them. Study them. If they've developed antibodies, that's a great place for us to start looking for information when we create future vaccines or future therapeutics. Maybe we need to mass produce antibodies to protect people from this. One of the best ways to do it is to get actual live antibodies, and we can do that from these ostriches. But the Canadian government seems hell-bent on killing these birds, and frankly, I don't understand why. A lot of people are now making a last-minute pitch to try and save these ostriches. And to the people who are going out of their way to try and save them, I thank you, because I think it is going to be an embarrassment and a tragedy on a national level if we allow the government to go in and kill these birds. Now, the courts have sided with the government on this one. They've said government wants to kill them, government can go in and kill them. And it's going to turn into a showdown today in British Columbia because there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get attention for this and willing to stand up for those ostriches so they don't get murdered today in cold blood.
Whoever sold all those hay bales to Canadian Food Inspection Agency, we're asking you to come forward. We will eventually find out where they've come from, and you are not going to be a hero today. I'll promise you that. We are asking for you to turn your trucks around. The transport trucks that have brought all the hay bales down our Highway 6 to 301 Langell Road to help in the assassination and murder of almost 400 animals that have never been tested for virus. We are asking you to turn your trucks around. Turn your trucks around and you will be the hero of today. You take all that hay back to wherever you came from because our animals are going to be corralled and blood will be splattered all over your hay bales. Take your hay bales home. Do the right thing and be the hero of today. Take your trucks home. Be the hero. Be the hero. Don't be the enemy. Do not kill innocent life. Take your hay bales home. Call out to the transport company and a call out to whoever sold all that hay to Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Turn around. Do the right thing. Protect life. You want to see the life? You protect life. You know all this virus they're saying here? You protect life. You protect her. You protect this girl that's looking at you. You protect her. You protect her. And you protect him. You protect these animals. You turn your trucks around. Turn your trucks around today.
I don't know who's helping out the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, but I'm going to suggest respectfully that the CFIA is on the wrong side of this, and anyone who's cheering on the cull of 400 beautiful ostriches that are not sick, they're perfectly healthy, and they may even hold the secret missing ingredient that we need to develop future therapeutics and vaccines. Please, if you are on the side of the government, you're on the wrong side of this. We don't do this in Canada. We're not going to cull 400 beautiful ostriches because the government wants to make a point. We know this government does not like it when people stand up to them. They don't. You saw it with the truckers, and now you're seeing it with the ostriches, and there's been a dozen examples in between. They don't like it when they get challenged. The people who are caring for these ostriches and trying to work out any compromise they can to save them are begging the government, don't kill them. The government went to court to get an injunction to kill them. There was helicopters flying overhead. Apparently, they were actually going to start shooting these things out of helicopters. And God, I can't imagine anything more tragic. You know what else I'm wondering is, where is PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals? I haven't heard a word from them pressuring the government to not go through with this. But if there's anybody at the CFIA or in our federal government listening, I'm asking you to, please don't do this to those birds. If you want to run a test and find out if they're actually sick, that's a fair compromise. We don't want avian bird flu to spread or to mutate, but there's no evidence that that's happening. There is a lot of evidence to suggest they've got antibodies that we should be learning about, not culling 400 ostriches. People are very, very upset about this, and I don't blame them in the slightest. God, I hope that we can find a way to save those birds and reach a compromise somehow so that they don't have to be culled. And with that, I'm going to move on to the rest of what I want to talk about on this episode of Scott Fox After 9. I'm going to start off with the gun buyback program from the federal Liberal government. Yesterday, they made it official.
Today, we're here to talk about our government's next steps in making good on that promise to Canadians. The assault-style firearms compensation program provides a way for firearm owners to safely dispose of and or deactivate their assault-style firearm and receive compensation in return. This program is voluntary. Nobody is having their weapon confiscated. People who use rifles to hunt can still hunt. If you want to purchase a hunting rifle, there are 19,000 legal options available in the Canadian market. An AR-15 is not one of those options, nor should it be one of those options. The program has been running for a while now. The first round of buybacks for businesses closed the end of April of this year. Through that program, over 12,000 firearms were claimed and destroyed, with over $22 million in compensation given to businesses. Now we're moving to the next phase, the opening of the program to individual owners. We're starting with a pilot in Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And I want to acknowledge the two MPs we have here from Cape Breton, Mike Calway and Jaime Batiste. The goal here is to use the pilot to test the online portal and firearms collection process in collaboration with the Cape Breton Regional Police Service.
I'm going to cut this guy off here because, frankly, I don't think he is interested in saying the things that he is saying. We already know a call got leaked. He was recorded talking to somebody, and he admitted this thing is going to go way over budget. It's not practical. It's not going to make our streets any safer. Really, what it's going to do is cost the taxpayers a ton of money and create a false sense of security. Now, if we back it up, originally, when the government came to the Canadian people, they exploited a tragedy and they said, we need to get these assault-style rifles off the streets. The AR-15s and what have you. This gun buyback or gun confiscation program has gone well beyond that. You know, it's funny. The minister says, well, there's still 19,000 guns you could get. Let's talk about the guns that they've banned, because a lot of them, I can't figure out what's wrong with them. I'll declare my bias, just like I did yesterday on this topic. I am a legal firearms owner. And nearest I can tell, none of my guns are on the confiscation list, which makes me happy. But there are folks out there who have got firearms in their family that they use responsibly and they store legally. There shouldn't be a problem with them having it. And yes, they are used for hunting and sport shooting, target practice, and things like that the government wants to take away. And they're real hell-bent on doing that because a lot of left-leaning governments around the world are all playing from the same playbook, and this is part of it. Take the guns away from the people. Now, the minister there, the public safety minister, who I am amazed still has a job after the leaked audio and all the other things that are surrounding this guy. He seems like bad news if you ask me, but I don't know why Carney hasn't fired him. But anyway, he said that this is a voluntary program. But then in the Q&A, he said something a little bit different. Listen to this.
How is this? You say that the program is voluntary, but after the amnesty ends, the people are not in compliance with the law. So how is this truly voluntary?
So Canadians starting in Cape Breton today will be able to enroll in the program be able to get compensated if they were to turn their firearm in, or they will be able to get compensation if they deactivate and confirm that it's deactivated with a certificate. So it is strictly voluntary. Nobody is being forced to undertake the buyback program. Well, the expectation is that they will comply, and the order in council, as you know, is being extended from this October to October of 2026. So there is a one-year window. Our expectations is that law-abiding citizens will abide by the law.
So it's not voluntary. It's voluntary, but we expect compliance. I mean, that's really the story of this government going back the last 10 years. Oh, it's completely your choice. Go ahead and do it if you want to. It's like the COVID vaccine. Oh, sure, it's your choice. But if you don't, X, Y, and Z are going to happen. It's the same thing here, except now we're talking about criminal charges for law-abiding people that have been vetted and approved by their local police force and by the RCMP. They've passed all the background checks. They've taken the gun safety course. They've invested in equipment to store the guns safely. They follow all the rules. This government is going to make them criminals if they don't voluntarily comply. Let me bring in one of the cops that was there doing this announcement with the public safety minister.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm pleased to be here today on behalf of the Cape Breton Regional Police Service to collaborate with the Government of Canada on this pilot for the assault-style firearm compensation program. Police see firsthand the devastating impacts of gun violence, and we know the importance of removing these dangerous firearms from our communities. So we are pleased as a police service to be able to assist by providing a safe and secure process for firearms owners to voluntarily return firearms that the government has now prohibited for public safety. At the Cape Breton Regional Police Service, we have the capacity and the expertise to safely collect, verify, and secure the prohibited firearms identified in our area so that the government can test the elements of this program. We are a large enough organization to facilitate with no impact.
I'm just going to cut this guy off because I don't know who he is or if he could get any more boring, but wow. Hey, listen, for a cop to come out and say, we're participating in this program because we believe in gun safety, tells me he's really not that interested in gun safety. He's practicing a political ideology. Here's what I mean by that. That ideology is simple, that regular people shouldn't be allowed to have guns. Only the government people and military should have guns, and maybe police. That's what they want. They don't want anyone to have any guns. And they say there's 19,000 that you can still get. Well, we'll see how quickly that 19,000 whittles down to really just pellet guns and maybe slingshots. They're going to take away all of the guns. This is just the latest in this phase. I don't know why the Cape Breton police are taking part. Even the Ontario provincial police have said they're not going to take part. The entire provinces of Alberta and Saskatchewan have said, no, we're not letting our cops take part in this because it is not fair. The minister himself said this is a ridiculous program that's going to go way over budget and won't do anything to make the streets safer. That came right from the minister in that call that got leaked. It's preposterous for them to stand up now and say it's about public safety. It's not, because we all know the crimes that are being committed with guns are not being committed with the guns that they're confiscating. They're being committed by the illegal gun owners, the people who have bought a piece on the street and are now running around our neighborhoods waving them in people's faces. It's craziness, if you ask me.
If Canada is a rule of law, why did you offer to pay someone the difference in compensation and bail them out of jail? You're a minister. Why'd you say that?
Let's maybe put this in context. This was a private conversation with an individual that I've known for many years. I said these two issues frankly, in bad humor, that is being misinterpreted. It is very clear that there was a private conversation. It is with someone. It is an acquaintance.
Do we believe you now, or should we believe what you said on the phone?
Well, first of all, it's not the phone. It was in the context of a private conversation in person. What is important is that if you look at it in context, that was not a serious attempt. It was a bad attempt at humor on my part. It was in no way to suggest that they will either I will bail them out or otherwise. That is not.
Why say
that-
you should do humor about? Is it a subject you should do humor about?
Let's look at the context of it. It was a 20-minute conversation, and as part of the conversation, in a private setting, it was a range of issues that we discussed. So it is humorous.
Why say one thing in private and one thing different in public?
Was to see that this program moved along quicker, and what we have today is maybe, hopefully, 200 guns in Cape Breton. Have you not failed at the task of getting this moving faster?
Absolutely not, because we need to test the system that we have for individuals.
Oh my God. It is remarkable that Mark Carney has still not fired this guy. You know, for him to try and turn that leaked call into, it was a joke. If you heard the call, I'm not going to play it because it's not my audio. It was sent to the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Owners or something like that. So it's theirs to play, and that's fine. I don't need to play it here, but you're welcome to look it up. It's out there in the public domain. He's now saying he was kidding, and you have to listen to it with context. I don't see it that way. He knows this isn't going to work. That's the minister in charge saying it's not going to work. It's going to go over budget, and it's not fair, and it's not going to make our streets any safer. This is another government program that they're gaslighting people on to say it's for your safety, when they know it's not actually going to make things any safer. That's just how they gaslight people into getting behind them when they want to do these things. I'm not going to spend any more time on the gun buyback program or confiscation program. Lots of other stuff to get to, including the Prime Minister. And I am going to, maybe even against my better judgment, play a little bit of Jimmy Kimmel from last night. I know a lot of people didn't see it. We did carry it on the Canadian networks, but there's a lot in America that did not. And if they want to see Jimmy, they're going to have to listen to this podcast or watch it on YouTube. I've got some of those highlights coming up. Before I get to that, though, yesterday, that son of a bitch, Tiff Macklem, governor of the Bank of Canada, was doing a speech. He was in Saskatoon, and he said a couple of things that were worth listening to. Here's Tiff.
For Canada, the ramifications of a new relationship with the United States are immense. And one thing is clear, we cannot afford to wait this out. Canadian leaders, business leaders, political leaders, economic leaders need to chart a new course. We should have been making changes 15 years ago, but the next best time is now. The United States will always be a crucial trade partner. But we need to find new markets for our products and new products for our markets. We need to improve our productivity to compete globally, and we need to attract foreign capital. Around the world, countries and corporations are looking for new partners. Canada should be top of the list. So let me begin with the 4 megatrends. First, global trade growth has slowed. You can see this in chart 1, which shows global trade as a share of global.
He's just a boring bastard, so I'm not going to play any more of it, especially when he gets into charts. But it's interesting what he said. He is now saying that we should have started making ourselves more independent and making ourselves our own best customer 15 years ago. Okay, all right. Well, I mean, Trudeau was in charge for 10 of them, and now we've got Carney, so maybe we should look back with a little bit of hindsight and say, missed opportunity. He is saying that the U.S. is always going to be a critical trading partner of ours, but despite that, we need to open ourselves up to other markets. And I think by and large, all Canadians agree with that. But we can't cut off our nose to spite our face. We still need to find the best possible deal with the Americans. And the Americans are over there waiting. We've just got to stop resisting and start dealing and come up with something that works well for everybody. But we also need to diversify our trade. Prime Minister Carney's been in charge for more than 6 months now. This is the second time Parliament has sat, and there's still nothing on the books. Still nothing. We still haven't repealed all of our anti-competitive laws. We've still got insane green regulations in place, and we haven't greenlit anything that's going to help us get our products to market. That's the governor of the Bank of Canada saying all of those things. I also want to point out here, Tiff here, if he's that worried about the global economy and our economy and us getting through this, quote unquote, he should be calling on Mark Carney to not print any more money. Printing more money is going to lead to more inflation, and more inflation is going to lead to higher interest rates. And frankly, Canadians have got nothing left in the tank. There's no further that they can go. When this budget comes out in November, it's going to call for billions and billions and billions of new dollars being printed. And frankly, we can't do that. it's going to be catastrophic for our economy. Looking down the line, this is something Tiff will be paying attention to as well. On Friday, our latest GDP numbers are going to come out. And once those come out, there's no way to deny, starting Friday, everyone's going to have to actually formally acknowledge we are in a recession. And we've got to do whatever we can to get ourselves out of it. Tiff, you could actually be part of the solution here by encouraging your buddy Mark, don't print any more money and find a way to live within your means and live within the budget. Actually, we got to scrap a lot of the spending plans in the budget. Just yesterday, Prime Minister Carney committed, was it $60 million to give to Haiti to help them deal with gang violence. You know, I'd like to point out we've got a gang violence problem happening here, too. I don't know why we would give $60 million to Haiti when we've got a $100 billion deficit. We don't have $60 million. I mean, that's just math. Speaking of the prime minister, yesterday, he wrapped up his trip to New York City for UN week, and he had a couple of interesting things to say. Let's check in with the prime minister and see where he's at.
Hi, Laura Dillon Kane, Bloomberg News. Given that we aligned our China tariff policy with the U.S. and we remain in delicate trade talks with the Trump administration, what realistically can we offer the Chinese government in exchange for some relief on canola tariffs? Could it involve allowing into Canada some greater Chinese investment or products related to the areas you mentioned yesterday, like climate or energy? And further, does your meeting with the Chinese premier today potentially lay the groundwork for an eventual meeting with Xi Jinping?
Well, thanks for the question. As I'm sure you know, but just to underscore, China is Canada's second largest trading partner. It has been for a long time. And there is a very broad range of commercial relationships that already exist and a much larger range of opportunities for both countries in developing the relationship. You mentioned some of them, clean and conventional energy. China, for example, is one of the purchasers of liquefied natural gas in the LNG project, which has just begun shipping gas. I should say LNG 1 because there's a second phase of that potentially. So in conventional energy, but as well in clean energy. That's one example. There are a range of opportunities, obviously, in agriculture and elsewhere. And I would take that as the first point. We can go into more detail if you wish. The second is there is some alignment of tariffs with the United States. And I will highlight particularly in the steel sector, where we've been very clear in the approach that we have taken. And we had an open discussion I did with the Premier and our Chinese colleagues about that and the reasons for that. The fact is that North America has an integrated steel market. Canada has the most open steel market in the world. We contribute to the competitiveness of many American industries, including the auto sector, and that's worth preserving. That's part of the discussions we're having with the Americans, but that is the first best use of Canadian steel and protecting those Canadian jobs, and this government is resolute about doing that. But there are other areas where, as I said, to go back to my first point, where we can expand. We had very constructive set of discussions which built on earlier phone calls, which built on exchanges between our foreign ministers, exchanges between our trade ministers. Those discussions will deepen. I expect to I will expect at the appropriate time to be meeting with President Xi Jinping, but continuing this dialogue with the Premier. Thank you.
Next.
Okay, so he didn't answer the question, but God, is it ever refreshing to hear him talk? Compared to Trudeau, anyway. Trudeau would have given you a word salad and not even come close to answering the question. Carney there actually had a fairly thoughtful response. The question, again, that he didn't answer is, if Canada and the U.S. are aligned in our tariffs against China, how on earth can we diverge from the Americans to get a better deal with China? Can that be done? He talked about steel. He talked about an integrated North American auto market. Those are all things that I like to hear. We do have an integrated automotive market, and frankly, I'd like to see Canada and the U.S. working together. That was always the intention of having an integrated auto sector. We can do stuff, they can do stuff, we produce great cars, and we make them at a good price for the middle class. That was always the point, and I'm glad to hear that Prime Minister Carney, I don't know if he was supposed to say that or not, but leaked out, this is part of the conversation that we're having with the Americans. That gives me a little bit of hope that we're actually having thoughtful, pragmatic negotiations and we're making some progress. No indication that we are. It's just a gut feeling that if he mentioned that, that means we got to be getting close to getting something done. So that's good. But it doesn't change the fact that the Americans are our main trading partner. And how are we going to deal with China if we're following the Americans' lead on tariffing the Chinese and their electric vehicles? I don't know. Carney's in a bit of an awkward spot here. I don't know how he's going to walk any of this back. But either way, we need to see some deals getting done here because the tariffs are just not good. And we really need to get to a place where there's consistency. We understand what the policy is going to be on the other side. We're steadfast in a principled stance here in Canada, and we can make some progress that is going to make our middle class, the American middle class, and the Chinese middle class a lot more prosperous. Another question I want to play for you, though, and the answer from the Prime Minister is there's been a lot of little audio excerpts leaking out from some of the meetings and media avails that the Prime Minister had in New York about him, number one, putting Canadian boots on the ground in Ukraine and putting Canadian boots on the ground in Gaza. A reporter asked him about that. I believe this is Judy from CTV.
Judy Trin with CTV News. Prime Minister, should Canada have acted earlier to recognize Palestine? And secondly, if you could clarify a comment that you made during your fireside chat at the Foreign Council, you left open the door for using Canadian soldiers to support peace in Gaza, it appeared. Is that the case?
Yeah, thank you, Judy. The first point is that the decision to recognize Palestine, and the first indication that that was likely to happen, was first and foremost triggered by the prospect of a two-state solution, as I'll repeat myself, receding before our eyes. So it was something that was consistent. We've made this point from the start. It's consistent with Canada's policy, two-state policy, that's existed since 1947. Every Canadian government has had a two-state policy.
Okay, I just want to stop the Prime Minister there before I get to the rest of his answer, because that's an interesting one. And I've heard a number of people say that, including our Foreign Affairs Minister, Anita Anand, saying that we had to declare Palestine an independent state because the possibility of a two-state solution was receding. The window was closing for a two-state solution. And nobody's actually been able to explain to me why that is. I mean, the Israelis don't seem like they're hell-bent on occupying Gaza. It seems to me they just want to get rid of Hamas and get their hostages back. So I'm not quite sure why everybody all of a sudden is using that talking point that the window for a two-state solution was closing. I frankly don't understand that, and I don't understand why they think it was closing, or if that's just an excuse to justify doing what they wanted to do anyway.
And every Canadian government, ours included, had hoped that that would be the result of a negotiated settlement proceeding in an orderly fashion. But that there was a move and a common understanding, including by the Israeli government, of the desirability, ultimately, of having a free and viable Palestinian state living side by side in peace and security with the State of Israel. You've seen my statement, including at the UN yesterday. I detailed the reasons why that is receding. I can respond if you have a follow-up, but I'll just take that as read. So our decision was triggered by this possibility going away, in violation in part of international law, certainly inconsistent with the right to self-determination and freedom of people and dignity of people. And it was part, as you saw with the announcements in the last few days, of a coordinated effort. A coordinated effort which is one part of a much bigger set of efforts to try to achieve a lasting peace in the region. Not all those efforts are aligned perfectly. It's understandable given the complexity of the situation. They all have the same goal. Last point to answer your second part of your question. If peace can be established in a demilitarized, and it has to be fully demilitarized, Palestine, no role for Hamas. And this is after the hostages have been returned as the first requirement and other factors. There will need to be a stabilization force. That stabilization force my judgment, our judgment, will be an external stabilization force, a neutral stabilization force, something we used to call a peacekeeping mission. And since I'm at the UN, our mission, I would call a peacekeeping mission. A variety of countries would contribute to that. My comment is merely yesterday, and I'll be clear, Canada will do what's best for peace in that region. That could be material, it could be financial, it could be personnel, but I wouldn't put any more weight on that. There's so much more that has to happen in order for it to come together. Okay?
What he said, and he didn't deny it, is that he's going to put boots on the ground in Gaza. And here's the problem. The prime minister says, oh, don't worry. We're only going to do that if Hamas is gone and they're demilitarized and the hostages are returned. So don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. That's a long ways away. And while I do think it is a long ways away, what happens when it stops being peaceful? What happens when they're not demilitarized? Because we know they're not going to demilitarize. Hamas is not just going to walk away and say, oh, the Canadians are here. We can retire and just enjoy our backyard and the rest of our beautiful country. That's not going to happen. I don't want boots on the ground for a war in the Middle East. Not Canadians anyway. And not that I don't think Canada can play a role, a peacekeeping role around the world. But a lot needs to get done for our military. And frankly, I just don't think that we have the personnel, the equipment, the experience, or the desire to go into a situation like that right now. We just don't. I do not want to see Canadian boots on the ground in Gaza under any circumstances. Not at the moment. Not as things lie right now. Yeah, the prime minister said a lot of things have to happen before that. I don't want him to put that on the table yet. Let's see where the chips lie in a few months. First and foremost, let's return the hostages. And once the hostages are returned, then Hamas is supposed to just walk away into the sunset, apparently, and then we'll recognize a free and independent Palestinian state. What if they don't? If they're still involved in any way, are we still sending Canadian troops? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered, and frankly, I do not like the prime minister committing our soldiers to going over to foreign conflicts without even a debate in parliament. These are things that need to be decided by the collective of our lawmakers, and that gets done in the House of Commons, not by the prime minister away on a foreign junket in New York. I'm going to move on here because there's one more thing I want to fit into this episode before I'm done, and it's the topic again of Jimmy Kimmel. As you know, Jimmy Kimmel was pulled off the air, and let's recap why. Because he made a wildly inappropriate comment accusing Trump supporters of killing Charlie Kirk. And he tried to walk it back by saying, it was a joke. Comedians tell jokes. And it turned into some sort of a wild argument about free speech. And frankly, it's not the same thing. I have free speech, and right now I'm exercising that here in my podcast. But I'm also a radio broadcaster, and I have a responsibility as a broadcaster in mass media to get it right. And I just can't go on the radio and make wild accusations, because what Jimmy Kimmel did and him getting pulled off the air would have happened to anyone else. And by the way, it was ABC that pulled him off the air, not the FCC and not Donald Trump. If I had said something on Canadian radio airwaves, like Jimmy Kimmel said on American television airwaves, I fully expect that I'd be pulled off the air by the CRTC or the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council or my employer. I would expect that that would probably be a consequence. But this thing got so twisted around, and the hate for Donald Trump clouded a lot of people's judgment, and it really made it seem to people who don't really pay attention to the news like Donald Trump had Jimmy Kimmel fired for telling nasty jokes. That's really not what it was. Well, ABC said his show was suspended indefinitely. Indefinitely could end at any time, and it did. They returned him to the airwaves last night, and I was hoping for a mea culpa. I was hoping for Jimmy Kimmel to come out and first apologize for his comment. I was hoping for a little bit of conciliation. I was hoping for a different tone from Jimmy Kimmel. The whole point of these late night comedy shows hosted by comedians is that they tell jokes and it's funny. Not that it's a political rant every single night. And then they hide behind, well, I'm a comedian, so you can't criticize me if they get in trouble for it. That's what I don't want to happen with late night TV. I think Jimmy Fallon is a great example of late night TV can thrive. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be funny. It's meant to be silly. And Jimmy Kimmel does that Jimmy Fallon does that well. Jimmy Kimmel treats it like a soapbox every night where he can get up and espouse his political views. And that's not the point of late night television. Here's a little bit of him last night on ABC.
Welcome back to Jimmy Kimmel Live. We are still on the air in most of the country, except ironically for Washington, D.C., where we have been preempted. We are off the air in Nashville, New Orleans, Portland, Oregon, Salt Lake City, and St. Louis, where none of my wife's family is able to watch the show tonight. So sorry, Aunt Sharon. Sorry, Aunt Maureen. You'll have to go to YouTube, I guess.
Okay, he's talking about that because a lot of the ABC affiliates, which are privately owned, made the decision that they don't want Jimmy Kimmel back. You know, Disney owns the ABC network, but there are independently owned television stations that become part of that network, and there's nothing requiring the affiliates to carry the show, especially if they could end up with an FCC complaint. Here's more of what Jimmy had to say.
But I do want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I posted a message on Instagram on the day he was killed, sending love to his family and asking for compassion, and I meant it, and I still do. Nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way.
Little disappointing, but hey, let's see where it goes. This apparently is a second chance for Jimmy Kimmel. I'm hoping that he uses his opportunity in broadcast to try and create a broad audience. It doesn't need to be him doing a podcast every night like I do every day, talking about his political views. That's not what that show is supposed to be. Jimmy, welcome back. Glad you got a second chance. Hopefully, more of us that have been canceled or censored over the years will get a second chance like you did. Please don't waste this. You don't need to be so divisive. I realize that you have your political views and your political ideology, and you are more than welcome to do that. But not everybody agrees with those views or that ideology, and I don't understand why you would instantly label them essentially losers and uninformed because they disagree with you. That's not what Charlie Kirk did. That's not what I do here on my podcast. And on Jimmy, I want you to make your show more inclusive. Let's work on the jokes and make it funny again. Make late night TV funny again. And I think if you cast a wide net and you offer some entertainment, more people are going to watch. I'm getting a lot of DMs in for Friday's episode, and I love that. Listener DMs on Friday is where you can ask me anything, you can say anything, call me out, agree, disagree, whatever you want. Go ahead and slide into my DMs, and Friday I will have those. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about a number of different things, but I think that is going to be completely contingent on what happens today with the ostriches. Save the ostriches. There's no reason to kill them. We don't need to kill any being that we don't have to. And frankly, I don't see a compelling reason that we need to kill them. Common sense needs to prevail here. Humanity needs to prevail here. Compassion needs to prevail here, and we need to save those animals. They're not ours to kill. Have yourselves a great day, friends. It was really great talking to you. I appreciate you downloading. If you haven't already, hit subscribe, and if you haven't already, leave a rating. 5 stars goes so far for me, and it helps boost my presence in the App Store and gets new listeners to the pod. So if you don't mind, I would really appreciate that 5-star review. Have a great one, and I'll catch you right back here tomorrow.
Oh,